Hello, and welcome to this video tour of the FamilySearch.org website, world's largest completely free site for doing your family history. My name is Grant Sickstrom, and all the content of this presentation is mine alone, and it is not an official presentation of FamilySearch.org or FamilySearch International. This is going to be a very high view overview of the site, and it'll be great for beginners to see the scope of what is available on this site. And even for an experienced user, I hope that you'll be able to find a thing or two that you hadn't considered or learned about before. So to begin with, the first thing to do is go to the FamilySearch.org website, enter that in any browser. And then when you go to the site, you'll have two options here on the right, where you can either create an account if it's your first visit, or sign in if you've already have an account. For the create account page, you'll need to put in your name and a birth year, date, and month, and then continue. It will ask you to select a username, which needs to be unique, and a password. Also enter a mobile phone number, which you can use to recover your account if you forget your password. And at the bottom, you'll need to agree to the terms and conditions, and then you can create an account. Well, if this is a free site, why go to the trouble of creating an account? Well, here are some reasons. With an account, you're able to create an online tree. So with you can begin your tree and add your ancestors and connect to those that are already in the tree. Of the millions of hints available, once you have a tree, they can be automatically found and brought to your attention. These hints are links to sources of vital records, other information that shows your ancestor in a specific time and place. It's also a great place to upload and preserve your own personal memories and photos, stories, any recordings you might have of your family members. You'll be able to store it here. It'll be kept and preserved for all time. Once you have an account, you have access to an additional millions of records that aren't available to those that are just browsing, really due to contractual agreements with the holders of the records. Some record custodians like to know who's been accessing the records, so that's why logging in as on an account is important. This site also is a collaborative site. It allows you to combine your work with those of other families, other people researching on the same family. FamilySearch is different from other family sites or genealogical sites where you build trees. On FamilySearch, there is just a single tree where everyone has a part of it. And it's linking together one record for each person that ever lived. Say as a contrast, for example, in Ancestry, every user has their own tree, which they can keep private or make public and grant access to those who can and can't see it. FamilySearch, every person who is recorded there that is deceased is available to be seen by every other user. Anybody who is still alive is protected by privacy, and you don't see any information on living people in FamilySearch. And lastly, to leave a legacy. When we pass on, all the information and all the work that we have done may be lost if it's not preserved in some way. And FamilySearch International is very strong and very robust in maintaining these sites and keeping them for generations to come. All right, we're going to go through all the menu items along the top now. We're going to start with the family tree menu item. And below that, there is a item where if you click on to go to tree. Once we click on that, we can look at the tree in various ways. This is the fan chart view of the tree. And you can see that I have blotted out with these gray circles those people that are still alive for their privacy. And the fan chart tree shows up to 7 generations of your ancestors. So your parents, the next generations of grandparents, the next circles, the great-grandparents, and so on. There are other views of this particular tree. Up in the top left, you can go then see by birthplace. This color codes the place of birth for each of the ancestors in your chart. And then you can see the friend of mine here, whose chart I'm looking at is one I was working on a couple of years back. And they have, it looks like, more than 10 different places of birth for his direct line ancestors back to the 7th generation. You can see the open spots there, still areas where research is needed to fill in those unknown ancestors. So it's a good thumbnail or quick picture review of what work you still have to do on your tree. This next view of the tree is, or the fan chart is saying how many sources have been added to the tree. It's very important to add sources to your tree to provide evidence and support of the information that you've put in your tree. So if you have a birth record that you found online, or you have one personally, you can scan it, upload it to the tree, providing evidence to prove that that ancestor lived in that place or was born in that place and time. And because it's a communal tree and all people can add to it, having a well-sourced tree can prevent disputes over who is the correct people and what is the correct information. Original documents are usually pretty reliable. You can also see this view by how many stories have been attached and photos. And then the final menu item there is for research helps. Now, up on the top right, you see a legend of what the colors mean. We don't have any red on this particular chart because red indicates a data problem. Most often it's just that a place name isn't standardized or a date may not be standardized, but it can also have more serious problems, like if a child's birth date is before its parents' birth date and such problems like that. Sometimes it's just a typo that causes these problems. Other times it could be an ancestor that's connected incorrectly to a family. And those red ones can be corrected. Now the blue ones are the ones that are showing record hints. So of the millions of records that FamilySearch has indexed and has in their database, when you create a tree, it looks for any matches to the database of indexed in records that match information of your relatives in your tree. If it finds what it thinks is a match, it brings a hint to you, and then you can decide whether that is indeed a match. And if it is, you can attach the source to your tree with just a few clicks. Now there's another view of the tree, which is a standard landscape view, sometimes called a pedigree view. And you can see that on the left-hand side, it begins with a particular couple. And as you move to the right, it goes back in time. So the way that the families are connected here, it's the husband or the one spouse is on top, the other spouse is on the bottom, and then the parents connect to that one. So Dennis John Kinzer's parents are up here, Nicholas Jacob Kinzer's parents are here, and so on. And you can go back by clicking on the little symbols here to expand another 2 generations as far back as you have information on your family. If you actually click on the name of a person in the tree, say if I click on Jacob Philip Kinzer right here, I'll open up a summary card for Jacob. This shows some basic data on his birth and death place and date, and also how many sources and memories I have for him. Memories are typically photos and documents. I can then click on his name again on that summary chart, or the word person at the bottom, to take him to the detail page for Jacob Philip Kinzer. So again, we have various boxes underneath his name. There's room to put in a life sketch, a brief biography of the person, segment for vital information where we have his name, sex, birth and death and burial information. Then there's a section for other information in the middle of the page that can be expanded, and recording other information such as alternate names, nicknames, other information specific to this person. Then down below, you see 2 columns of families, or 2 columns of names. And we have the name bolded here. So Jacob Philip Kinzer is bolded here on both sides. So on the right side, it shows Jacob as Jacob Philip as a son to Jacob Kinzer and Mary Spinweber. And so he appears as a child along with his siblings on the right side. On the left side, he appears as the parent with his wife and his own children. So it's in one glimpse, you can see 3 generations of the family with him in the middle. I can also click on the top menu item to show a timeline. And this timeline will give me the date and place of any event that's been recorded in his on his tree. So of those 45 sources, it looks through the sources, looks for documents and items that could be put on a timeline, such as the birth, the census record, which shows where he lived, a marriage record, births of children, death of spouse. So all those can be put on a timeline. And then you can also do a map view. So on the right-hand side shows the view by showing map pins and how many events occurred at each of these map pin locations. You can zoom in and actually look at the individual. And these maps are good to try to find errors in your research. If you have a person who is born and raised in a particular country, and suddenly see a map pin somewhere in Scotland, you think, well, maybe I made a mistake. And sure enough, if I looked, instead of keying Banff, Alberta, when I typed in Banff, I put in Banff, Scotland, because it auto-filled. And so easy way to fix errors like that by looking at a map. If I look at the list of sources that are here, you can see that they're arranged chronologically with the name of the source, and then I can view the source. And there are different icons in front of each of the sources. One that shows a little tree are ones that are actually come from FamilySearch. They're records that FamilySearch has in their database, and I have linked to them. The ones that show the globe are records that are on a separate site. So when I click on that little globe, it'll advise me that I'm moving to a different site, and I can go view it there, such as say find a grave or some other place where the record could be found. And the ones that show a little scrapbook or a photo album, these are images and records that have been imported into FamilySearch from another site, and they're not inherently in the FamilySearch database, but have been added to FamilySearch as an upload. So if I was to look at the actual memories tab at the top, you can see there are 17, and it shows several photos in the photo section and several documents in the documents section that have been added to him. There's also another view of a person's page you can get, a more detailed view, and this one is great for sharing with friends and family because it shows so much information on this one page. It has a little life summary, it has his spouse and children, meaning of what his name might be down that first column. Middle column, you can click and look at all the photos and memories, his parents and siblings, and then all the sources that are connected here too. And then on the right-hand column there, you see a family timeline that shows Jacob when he was born, and that gray bar is the span of his life, and also his wife. And so you can see that this fellow had 16 children, and that's correct. He did have 16 children. And he also lived to be 105. So quite an accomplishment for someone born back in 1871. Now you can also share this information with others. As I said, you can post it on Facebook, Twitter, instant message it, you can email it, or just get a link that you can then send via mail to somebody. So very shareable, and it's fun to share with your family information that you found on a relative. There's also a relationship. If I go back here, you can say you can view relationship. Most pages have that, and it'll then draw a chart of how you're related. So in this particular case, I was looking to how this person was related to Richard J. Schwartz. This is for my friend, and it's through this path. He goes up to the common ancestor, which is Nicholas Kinzer and Elizabeth Klein, and then down that genealogy to find the person. It shows that he's the first third cousin one times removed. All right, so back to the landscape view of the tree. You will see if there are hints. A little blue square there is shown on Olaf at the bottom of the screen. When I click on that little blue hint, I'll get a little pop-up window that shows all the hints, and then I can show all by clicking show all. And on this one, there's actually more than 5. There was more like 8 here, it shows, and they're listed. So at the very top of the page shows what's already on FamilySearch, and then below are all the hints and the information that's in that hint. And hopefully it'll match up for the information on that person. I can then click review and attach. When I click review and attach, see this one happens to be for a record of birth. I think it's actually so that's his baptism date, and his birth date is the 25th of January. and I look at the top and I have a birth date of 25th of January. So I'm pretty sure it's the same guy. So I'll click review and attach, and it's going to bring me to the source matcher. All right. So how this works is on the left-hand side of the page is the information from the source, the information that they indexed for that record. And then on the right side, it tries to line it up with what's on FamilySearch. And if it matches, which this case does, because we've got the husband and the wife with the same names, spelling is a little different, but spelling varied quite often in those days. And then we have in the blue in the center there, what's on this record, which is a baptism date of the 4th of March, which we don't have on FamilySearch. So when I click that add in the middle, it'll move it over to FamilySearch. And so without having to type anything, just clicking a few mouse buttons, I can add that record. See at the top as well, we can click here and get the image of the document. And so here is the image. And that first arrow there shows the actual entry, which shows a 25th of January birth and a 4th of March baptism for Olaf. And at the bottom along that blue bar is the indexed information. And that's how we found it, by keying in his name or having his information on FamilySearch. It tries to match information that's in this indexed information. I did find a match, and that's why that blue hint came. So you see also I can see another view of that information by clicking on the icon of the little piece of paper next to Olaf's name at the bottom. And when I do that, I'll be brought to this page, which shows a link on the left to open up the image in full screen. And the information in the middle is all what the indexing is there for that document. And then I can go and attach it to my tree right from here. So when I click it, I go back to this page here really, and then allows me to attach it. Okay. Now, also on Family Tree, as you're doing work, you may want to say, well, how do I track my work? Well, there's a menu item here for my contributions. So when you click on that, you're brought to a page where you can see the stats. So on this page, I'm looking at the stats that you can see. I worked on this in 2020, adding over 3,000 additions and changes to the tree, and a little bit into 2021. And then I'd stopped and worked and helped somebody else. I can also go up here and I can click on my changes. This will then give me a list in order of reverse order of when I've made these changes. So I can scroll right back to the bottom of all 3,100 and more changes to see all the changes that were made. And then if there's any problems, I can know what it was before I changed it. All right, we're moving along now to another main menu item at the top called Memories. And in Memories, I'm selecting Gallery. And in the gallery is a listing of all of the documents that I've uploaded to FamilySearch, and any images or photos that you may have uploaded from your own collection to make yours more interesting. So they're all here, and if I need to access them, I can from here. They're also going to be found on the individual person that they're tagged to or attached to. So every one of these documents is tagged to individuals in my tree or in the tree, and I can go to that person and also see the document there. But here the documents are all in one place. So below gallery, we can look at people under the Memories menu item. This will show me all of the, I can choose to show everybody in my tree, or here I'm just looking at close relatives. You can see in that drop box on the top. And this will allow me to then track, because it's a shared tree, I want to maybe track if anybody else is working on my relatives and making changes. I can do that just by clicking on the little star next to their image or their name here. And once I do that, when anybody makes a change on that person, I'll be notified. I can then go and see what the change was made. And then, hey, if it's a great one, maybe somebody's added a document I've never seen or a photo, I can then click on their information and send them a note of thanks. And then maybe I can collaborate with somebody. If it's somebody I didn't know that's working on my tree, we can collaborate and share information. And if it's information that's wrong on my ancestor, they made a mistake and had something that doesn't look quite right, I can message that person and ask them, you know, why that was added. And hopefully if it was a mistake, you can get it corrected. All right, now we're moving over to the search menu and several items here. The first one is records. So we can go to record search and search for really any record that we have, historical records for a person. So you can add a name here. You can also add a life event by clicking one of those items here and adding birth information, marriage, or whatever residence. I can add family members, spouses, mothers, fathers, or children through other persons. And then I can do a search that way. So there's millions of records there in that search, but that's not all the records that FamilySearch have. When we do a search on records from our search box, we're only looking for records that have been indexed. But the vast majority of records that are in the FamilySearch database are not indexed. I would say they estimate about 20% have been indexed, meaning 80% are only found by looking at the images themselves. So we can go down to images in this next menu item and click there. And then we're brought to a page where we can explore these images. This will have both indexed and unindexed images here because it's having them all. And you can see the number of documents here. There's over 4.8 billion images. And when you think that images can have often multiple people on it, like a census record has maybe 40 or 50 people showing, these 4.8 images contain billions and billions of people. And of course, they're not all different. You'll have many documents showing the same person. So that's what we want to find. So we can enter a place here, a date by life event, lots of ways to look at the images. So if I'm curious, say I have an ancestor in Kansas, I could put Kansas here. So I want to enter Kansas for the place, and it's going to find out how many of these different record sets are for Kansas. And the total, there's over 2,700 places that are there. And over on this particular page, they added up the total number of results, adding up the image counts. So within here in Kansas, there's also by county, there's 76 places within Kansas that I can look at. And so I can go in and zero in even more. Now up in the top right-hand corner, I can do a map view of this page. And it shows me then a map of Kansas, the state, which is a very rectangular state. And each of these map pins represents one of these record collections shown on the left, those 76 counties. Now, this is a very good tool to use because if I had a family that lived in Eureka, say here, and I didn't find them there, well, I want to look someplace close because sometimes the boundaries, county boundaries weren't always the same. They would move over time. Plus people would travel a little bit to do things, and their records may be in adjacent counties. So this tells me very easily which are the adjacent counties by the map, and I can just click on these map pins and search the films for that one. All right, so if I was to click on, if we go to catalog now, we can find similar records that have been cataloged. And if we take a look at that, again, we can search by place name for the catalog. And if I do that, I can find a listing of all of the types of information that is available for Kansas, all the way from almanacs to bibliographies to biographies, cemeteries, census records, and so on. And if I was interested in finding naturalization records, I could scroll down till I found naturalization and citizenship. And I click on it, I see in the brackets there's 8, which means there's 8 different collections for naturalization. So you can see for native races, there's 39 collections here and so on. It's in the numbers and brackets tells you. So I've opened this up and I'm looking for a particular naturalization for somebody that naturalized in 1928. Now there are 3 different divisions that cover that span of years, so I'd have to decide which ones, but I'm looking in the 3rd division. And when I click on that, it opens up another page which shows me all of the different films that have been done for that particular set of information. So you can see at the bottom that we've got a half a dozen films there. And when you look at format on the right side, we can see the image of a camera. A camera means that we're actually going to see images of the document. If it's just a magnifying glass, it means it's just an index. If there's a camera and a magnifying glass, it means that there's images with it that are indexed. So if I was to click on this camera, I'm only going to see images. I'm not going to find an index, so I can't search by name there. So I click on that camera item and I see, just as if this was a roll of microfilm that has now been digitized. And you can see at the top, this is 1,482 images on this film. So it is a daunting task to go through 1,482 images. So typically what I do want to do is find out how the film is organized. It could be alphabetical by the name of the people in it. It could be chronological by the dates that these records are created. It could be both. It could also be organized by town or city within a county, say. So once I understand how it is organized, I can start clicking on images and starting to find the one I want. So if I'm looking for a particular person, a particular date, I'll be opening up an image, looking at it, and then go forward or back until I find the right image. So say this is the image that I'm clicking on here in the middle, shown by the green arrow. If I click on that one, I will zoom into a full page of that one. And because this is a later naturalization, 1929, I actually have an image of the fellow, which is not a bad image considering it's a photocopy of an old photo of an old document. But what's really good about some of these sources is that I'd never be able to find this any other way because it's not indexed. I'd have to go to the film, know that this film existed, and then find it using, sort of checking out how it's organized the film, and then finding the record. Naturalizations can be a real good source of family history information because in the middle here, it's listed all of his children and place and date of their birth. So really valuable family history information right here. And it may be the only place you'll find information like that on their children. All right, another item that has much information that's sometimes overlooked under search are books. So if I click on the books item there, I get taken to a search screen where I can enter information. It says here, this digital library has more than 500,000 books, histories, maps, and more that are all about genealogy, all about family history. It doesn't have books on other subjects. It's all about finding family history or books that are useful for family history. Again, I can put in a keyword or a title or a subject or author here to find a book. So if you're looking for a genealogical book and you think, well, I don't have that in my library, it may be here and it may be viewable online. Number of the books are only available to do sort of keyword searches. A number of books, you're able to look at the book in its entirety. And then there are some books where you can actually download the book, a digital PDF of the whole book. So let me put in Kansas again and see. So I just put in Kansas as the subject line and I get 38 results because I also decided that I wanted to limit the number of books on Kansas to those with full permission, meaning books that I could download. So I did get 38 hits. This first one here is a historical atlas of Kansas. If that's the one I'm interested in, I could just click to view inside and look at the 181 pages that are in this book. There they are, just in thumbnails, and I could go and click on any one particular page or go through them all, or even download this whole book to my hard drive and read it later at my leisure. All right, the final item on the search one is Research Wiki. Again, a very valuable resource that not everybody knows about or uses to its full extent. We go to Research Wiki, and there are over 100,000 articles now. There was only 99,000 when I took this image, but there's over 100,000 articles. They're added all the time. It's much like the Wikipedia, where different authors can update and correct the information. And so what we have is a community of very knowledgeable genealogists and family history experts that create these articles and have this information available for you to use. If you have knowledge of a certain area, you're invited to also edit this information to make it even better. So if I put in Kansas again, we're going to look at what the entry is for Kansas. So here's the state again. On here, we have information about getting started with our research, a guided research, which shows the most important records for the births, marriages, and deaths, step by step on how to do research, how to find these records, and so on. There's also a link here to all online genealogical records. So if you're looking to find something online, that's the place to hit, and it'll show you a list of all record sets that are online. Then we have a clickable map of Kansas. So all of the counties here, you can see how rectangular Kansas is. Even their counties are pretty rectangular for the most part. I can click on any one of those counties and I would open up a wiki page just for that particular county. Now on the right-hand side, there's all kinds of record types we can focus in on and how to find those as well. All right, let me click on a particular county then. I go to the wiki page for, I've clicked on Rush County, Kansas, and it tells me a bunch of information for Rush County. We have the courthouse, where the address is and the contact information. So if you wanted to go to or phone the courthouse, you have that information. There's also a link to the website for that county. And it tells you kind of what the county clerk has and where some of these records are. There's also a little map here, or a table that shows you when the records, the beginning dates for major records like birth, marriage, death, and probates and so on. So if I'm looking for, say, a birth record in Kansas in 1880, I'm not going to find it because they didn't start keeping birth records until 1895. However, I might find a marriage record which started before 1880 and death records around that time. If it was in sort of the mid-80s, I might find a death record. There's usually a section here about known losses of records. Often records would be burned up when the courthouse burned down. So if that's the case, you'll have an indication that the courthouse burned and records are lost, so that you don't spend a lot of time looking for records that no longer exist. There's also a good section on boundary changes. So there's a good interactive formation boundary map here. You can click and you can just watch an animation and how the boundaries changed and how counties were formed within there. So very good information on the wiki, underutilized, but it's really helpful for, especially for places that you've never looked for records. I'll always go to the wiki first to see what I'm up against. And this covers the whole world. It's not just the United States. So any place, any foreign countries and so on, you can look, and there'll typically be a wiki entry when there's more than 100,000 entries here. Now, the last thing we'll talk about is just some fun activities that you can have. This final menu item, you can look at all activities. And there's things you can do. You can see if you related to any famous relatives, or compare your face to some of the images there on your tree to see who you look like, and some activities that you can do. So that's the quick tour of FamilySearch. And I hope you have learned a few things, at least give an appreciation of what FamilySearch has to offer, and enjoy your family history.